another of a few bonus broadcasts free to patrons, pretty much free to everybody. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I do have a YouTube link as this show will release to the podcast, the audio podcast audience in just a few days. But you can go back and watch if you would like your calls on any subject. So whatever's on your mind, I'll tell you kind of what's on my mind to start, which is how I roll in the monologue. Some people like the monologue, some people despise them. It's funny in the comment section, there's always somebody who jumps in and they're like, show actually starts at 13 minutes and 8 seconds. Meaning that's when I shut my blathering pie hole and we take calls. And other people say, screw the calls, please rant. So I can't please everybody. I'm just one man. Something on your mind, we'd love to talk to you. Natalie and I and a friend named Sam, we went to a candle making shop last weekend. I don't know, it's something that they thought would be fun, a nice distraction, bubble gum for the brain. Didn't know we even had one of those. How didn't know we had? Yeah, that's right. It's called Wick and Flame or something like that. And you go in and you pay, I don't know, $30, something like that. And you sit at a counter and then they say, well, what do you want? What is the aroma that you are seeking? And then they walk you over to this big wall of little cups of various scents. And it could be anything. It could be cinnamon. It could be the smell of whiskey. It could be leaves and grass. It could be some other thing. I mean, there must have been 150. And you're supposed to go through and sample. And then if your nose is overwhelmed, you clear your nasal palate by sniffing this thing full of coffee beans. That's supposed to reset you, I guess, almost like a wine tasting. And then you go back and you sniff some more until you find 2 or 3 that you really like. And it's funny because of all of us that were there, we all had different goals. I went up and I said, I would like something that smells like October. Because you know me, I love the month of October. She's like, we don't have anything out front, but in the back, I could go retrieve a few things. Oh, yes, special treatment for the fall aromas. So she came back and she brought me something called pumpkin buttercream, which was as delightful as it sounds. Then she had bonfire smoke. And it smells like we're sitting outside with roasting marshmallows over the bonfire. And then she wanted something to kind of spice it up. So we took a Moroccan spice and I mixed them all together. And she sat us at our workstation and we appropriated the different ratios of chemicals together, poured it into our thing. And then came the wax. And then we set the wick and it began to set up. And then I put glitter on the top because, hey, I just want glitter. I got copper colored glitter. And I'm tonight, after a week of curing, and has to cure apparently because the smells have to talk about it. I don't know how it works. Tonight, we light. Oh, shit. You hear my cat? Can you hear that? He does that. He just walks the halls and howls. I'm becoming a little concerned about his health. He's 15, 16-ish, starting to show some signs of decline, but he's also living a good life. I did not plan this. This was not a pre-recorded soundtrack. This morning, when he was sitting on my lap, he was totally zenning me out. And so I grabbed my phone just quietly and I took a little video of him doing what he does on an early morning. So maybe this will be some ASMR for you. Check it out. Sweet little kitty, right? Sweet little kitty. Totally relaxes me. So he doesn't seem like he's in discomfort. but he does, and he has always howled like a banshee, and he's not keeping his food in as much. So a couple of times a day, we're finding little discoveries, and I'm like, well, what does that mean? Because don't cats yak a lot anyway? If it gets any worse, he's going to the vet. It's just been that kind of week, and I'll get to that in just a second. Uh, I uh, I had an experience with technology that might interest you. So we had a front doorbell with this cheap ass camera thing on. You've seen the camera doorbells, but the one that we had, I don't forgot exactly where it came from. It was years and years old, and and the app barely pulled anything up. It hardly ever worked. So if someone rings your doorbell, in theory, you get a live video feed on your phone, or you have to go pull it up, and you're supposed to see who it is. Is it a solicitor? Is it a friend or family member, neighbor, whatever? But all you could see was an outline of a shadow because the light, the backlight from the yard and the street blew it out. You couldn't see a damn thing. Resolution was terrible, and it finally failed. I went by and it was flashing this red light. I couldn't do a reset. Screw this. So I looked online for newer video doorbells, and the technology has gotten crazy. And I found one, 5-star reviews across the board. I'll go ahead and tell you what it was. Let me pull it up. It's Tapo, T as in Tom, Tapo, Tapo. And they do cameras and they do doorbells and they do other stuff. They even have like a smart Roomba thing, a vacuum that goes around your house. So they got products. Never heard of Tapo. So I like, all right, well, it's $79. I'll get it. This thing is crazy. And we've set all kinds of parameters. It's got a 2K camera on it with a light on the actual doorbell. So if somebody comes up, it'll actually boost the light so you can see their face better. The clarity is better. It plays with the light better. And then you set boundaries. So if they walk up to your door, you decide you want to know about that. You tie it into your home system, and all of a sudden it says, someone is standing on your porch. What? Then it rings the doorbell, or someone rings the doorbell, and someone is ringing your doorbell. Ding dong. And your phone rings, and you can answer it from wherever you are and have a video conversation immediately with whoever has rung the doorbell. And there are all kinds of crazy options. You can set it to detect pets. You can have car detection or ignore the cars. And so I went and bought a companion camera for it, and I stuck it on the front corner of my house so I could see what the hell's going on all around my neighborhood. I've got some already installed, but I thought, well, I got to try this out. It's 2 cameras in one, each facing a different part of the street. And you can set those detections: cars, animals, kids, sidewalk, no sidewalk, driveway, no driveway. You can draw a line and say, if anyone crosses this point to this point, I have an invisible boundary. Somebody crosses this line, they're not on the sidewalk, they're not just hanging out near the street, but they're in my property. Somebody's doing that shit. I get an immediate notification on my phone in my house. It's insane. So it's not just a toy. But it kind of is. I've just been astounded. And then of course I'm like, well, I'm not tied into a cloud, or do I not know I'm tied into a cloud? Are we being surveilled? Are my patterns being documented when I go, where I go, what I'm doing? Am I being watched? In a surveillance state, these are fair questions to ask. You remember was it the Ring commercial on the Super Bowl, when somebody's stray dog had walked in front of a camera, and all of a sudden all the Ring cameras talk to each other, and they're like, hey, Bob's dog, who lives, this guy lives 5 miles away. Somebody contact Bob, his dog's over here. And the commercial was saying, what a great interconnected information database this is. The doggy was rescued. You and I are thinking, you got to be shitting me, right? This is a surveillance network running by itself. And how far does that go? But I'll admit, it's been kind of awesome. I mean, somebody walks up during the broadcast today. I'm in my home studio for now. I'm in my home studio. After a downstairs flood, we are waiting for the repair of the floor. They came in, ripped the whole damn thing out, and they brought in industrial fans and tore out sheetrock. And they just finished repairing the walls, so now we're waiting on floors. And they say they're going to move us out for a few days. So that's one of the reasons that I'm doing a broadcast in advance here, is because we may be ousted. And if I'm, in a hotel somewhere, as we're waiting to get access to our home, I'd have to stain the floor. I'm going to be doing, I think, some more writing. I'm working on a book project that, you know how projects like that are. You start a painting, you start a piece of music, you start a book, and you don't even know if you'll ever finish it or if it will go anywhere, but you just nibble away at it. It has been this way for months. How many words am I in? Like 15,000 words in. So I'm kind of committed. So I'll probably do that. When will it release? What's it called? I'm not even going there because I can't even promise you that you will see this. You won't, I can't promise you'll hear the audiobook. I can't promise it'll ever happen. But if I've got 3 days, it's going to be me and the dogs and cat in a hotel room. I don't know how that's going to work out. He's going to flip. He's going to be doing that stuff in a hotel room. I look forward to explaining that to the rooms next door. It has been kind of a traumatic weekend. And I only bring this up because I know you, this has touched you in your life. And I just want to talk about it if I can. And my wife would not, I'm not betraying my wife's trust. She would be obviously a little shy about all this, as far as attention, but she would certainly be fine with me telling you. Okay. So her mother has advanced Alzheimer's. I think Sue is upper 70s. And a few years ago, we got the diagnosis. We saw the signs. And she was deteriorating, but she was insisting, no. I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm fine. She became almost belligerent, which is understandable. She's panicking because her cognitive abilities are declining and she's desperate for control, and she doesn't want to become an object of pity. There's so many gears in that machine, and the rest of us are watching helplessly. And every day it gets worse, on the order of months and then a few years, to the point where Natalie will spend time with her, and she knows that Natalie is familiar, but she doesn't know that Natalie is her daughter. She feels safe enough. Like, there's something about you that is safe, but I don't know that you're my kid. I don't know your name. Sometimes she says it's my sister. Sometimes she says it's my friend. Sometimes she doesn't know. And Natalie is just a freaking gladiator. She spends all this time and she works on triggers for memory that take her to a joyous place. And there's something about music, at least for Sue, the music of her youth. She was a big fan of the 50s, genre, the 60s. She even sang in like a doo-wop band back in the day, And so Natalie will go over and pull up Pandora or whatever and choose that channel. And this woman who does not know her daughter's name, doesn't know where she is, will sing every lyric to the songs. It's crazy. And then she smiles and she kind of bounces in her chair. And there's some science to this. Forgive me for not knowing more about it. I'm sure you may. And then the music ends and the visit ends, and Sue goes back to this near panicky place where she's almost, she's like a piece of thin glass. She becomes weepy like that. And then she will go blank-faced, and then she'll look around. And then she might smile for a second, and then she begins to cry again. In a matter of a minute, this cycle happens, and Natalie is watching the deterioration of her mother. So it was brutal. Nat gets a call Friday that her mother, her husband takes her everywhere because she can't be left alone. She's still not in perpetual care. She still lives with her husband, who is not a great caregiver, but he's doing the best he can. And she collapses, low blood pressure. She just hits I think he caught her on the way to the pavement in front of a Costco. And so she was rushed to the emergency room and has been admitted and has been in the hospital for a few days. And so they've been working in shifts. I was up there last night with everybody, and she can't really sit up. She certainly can't stand, or her blood pressure plummets. As all this is going on, she's lying there, and she knows that she's among people that she should know, but she doesn't know us. She's lost all faculties. She can't control really anything. And we go through that minute by minute cycle. There's a smile, there's the blank stare, there are the tears, there's the reset. And I'll tell you, I know Sue and I have never been super close. I mean, she's always been lovely to me and vice versa, but we just didn't hang a lot. But, my wife, to watch somebody you care about go through that is tough because there's nothing I can do, right? I'm the husband. I'm trying to be a fixer. What can I do for you? Can I bring you food? Can I what? I tell I'm totally helpless, and she feels the same. And it's such an insidious disease. If there is ever any evidence that there is no benevolent God, this is up there on the list. The cruelty of Alzheimer's, the cruelty of it. You lose them a day at a time, and yet they are still here, but they're not here. They're drawing breath, their organs are working for the time being, at least somewhat, but they're not them. Like Sue died a long time ago. So what do you do with that? Cat. I'm trying to have a moment with you, and my cat comes in. Cat, what are you doing, honey? He's sympathizing. I don't know why I brought this up. I just can't not think about it. She's at the hospital now, and there's nothing I can do. I'm like, can I come up? No. Whatever. I had this very hard conversation, and I had a version of it after my father passed a few years ago, and he died of cystic fibrosis, which means his lungs scarred over, and he suffocated to death, right? They're bringing in oxygen. That doesn't keep up. So they have a bigger machine. That doesn't keep up. Finally, there's not a bigger machine. So they're limited. So they pump morphine into him so he doesn't panic himself off the bed. And until finally his body just gives out. Holy shit. And he was a devout evangelical, right? Devout. And taking his own life or taking control of his death would have been a sin because he would have been playing God. It never occurred to him. Never occurred to him. And I thought, nah, never. Not for me. Not for me. Right? You tell me that I'm going to suffer to death. And I don't know what I'm calling final exit. I'm going to Portland. I'm going to Switzerland. Can't. Oh, what's going on? This is the most odd monologue I think I've given in the last 10 years. I've got candles, I've got Alzheimer's, and I've got a cat that apparently wants to sing in a hairband. So, let's say I get the diagnosis tomorrow. And when we had, and Natalie wouldn't mind me having this conversation with you either, because you probably had it in your own life. I get the diagnosis, Seth, you are going to lose your mind one day at a time for 8 years. You will lose yourself. You won't know your wife. You won't know your neighbors. You won't know the members of your community. You'll be vacant. You'll panic. Your brain will lose the ability to tell the body how to do what the body does. Your heartbeat will flutter. Your kidneys will fail. You'll be going to the bathroom all over yourself. You'll lose the ability to walk. You will be a vacancy. Your body rebelling against you for years. And on top of that, especially in the United States, you will likely bankrupt the family you leave behind. Perpetual care in this country, good luck with that. Call it what? I think some of those places run $40,000 or $50,000 a year. Or if you're home, you've enslaved the caregiver to do the most awful of tasks and lose their own life, years of their own life, as they watch you die over the course of half a decade. No, not doing that. I live in a state where I think it's illegal in Oklahoma to do like medical aid and dying. And then comes the question, because I'm a frontline activist, and I understand that comes not with a lot of risk, but certainly in this climate, there is a measure of risk. So I have life insurance to make sure that if something was to happen, my wife will not be abandoned financially, that she'll be taken care of. Okay. You have Alzheimer's, Seth? And I say, fine. I'm going to employ a physician or get an advisor or take control of how I exit, right? Not in a macabre way, but in a liberating way. I am not going to give up who I am and the decision-making process about my life and death. Not doing it. It's not playing God. It's living with dignity and dying with some dignity. If I decided to do that, does it nullify the policy that I've been paying on for years and years and years to make sure that my family is not financially abandoned and goes bankrupt? Oh, I've been sitting here while she's been at the hospital, and I've just been stewing. And I'm so sorry to burden you with it, but I know this has touched you in your life. You have been a caregiver, or you've known somebody who contracted some long-term debilitating, oh my God, what are we going to do, disease or condition. And it disrupted every part of your life, and you found yourself grieving that person incrementally over the course of weeks, months, years. And everybody loses. Everybody loses. I don't know. I told Natalie that if I knew I was going to pass away, I'm doing my own eulogy. Like, I wouldn't burden her with it. Now, I certainly don't trust somebody else to organize it. Oh, hey, he's dead. Let's hire a preacher. No, not doing that. And I'm a professional communicator. So if I know it's coming while I still have all my faculties, I think I'm going to do my own eulogy. Welcome, everybody. Wish I was here. I thought about doing those cards with the Ouija boards. You'd seal them in envelopes and you'd hand them out to everybody when they come in and sit in the seats. And then all of a sudden I have them open them and there's a Ouija board inside, a Ouija board and a planchette. And the message on the Ouija board says, "Let's keep in touch." My religious family would freak out. Everybody else would be howling with laughter. Howling with laughter. And I get a chance to say to the people I care about what I've always wanted to say, what I try to say every day. I'd be able to speak to my values and talk about the world I've left behind and what I'd like to see happen. And then I would tell everybody, don't dwell on this, go live. Life is short, life is finite, life is fragile. Live. Remember me. Somebody better do some crying. Somebody better be crying over my ass. But when you're done crying, I want you to go live. Terry Pratchett has a documentary. It's an hour-long piece that aired in Britain. He received a lot of criticism for it about medical aid in dying. And he chronicled 2 or 3 different stories, including one guy who he had, I think, an autoimmune disease, some degenerative disease for which there was no cure. And the guy still had his mental faculties, but his body was failing. He was miserable and decided this is it. So alongside his wife, with Terry Pratchett in the room, he decided he was going to go ahead and plan and carry out his end on his terms. And so he allowed cameras in the room, Terry sitting in a chair across from him, and an exit guide sitting across, and his wife's holding his hand. And with all dignity, he thanks everybody. Thank you for everything you've done. Thank you for everything you are. On his terms. And then he drank a little thing of liquid and he fell asleep and his life was over. You could see Terry Pratchett, who had been, I think, diagnosed at the time with Alzheimer's himself, very moved and unsure of really how to feel, because of what I've just seen. But I thought, yeah. Surround me with the people I care about. Give me a measure of control. I'm sorry. Forgive. I'm just belaboring it. I'm going to move on. I did not mean to make the opening monologue about right to die issues. But I can talk to you. And I know you relate. I know it's touched you in some way. I'm sorry for getting emotional. So anyway, whatever you want to talk about for the rest of the broadcast, I'm all yours for what it's worth. And I see that there are some calls. I've changed how I take my calls. So let me pull this up on my thing and let me do the thing and let me see if I've got, is it Corwin dialing in?
That it is, Seth.
Welcome to the show. Thanks for your patience as I do, a half an hour of rambling. What do you want to talk about today?
Well, first, I'm sorry for what your wife and family is going through. Been there, done that. It's hard. It's very hard. So
Thank
my
you.
sympathies to all of you.
Thank you.
So on to me. I'm a trans guy, he, him pronouns. I came out when I was 45, about 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago. And for most of my family, they're mostly atheists, and it went reasonably well. Being atheist doesn't guarantee a good reception, but, we worked our shit out. The exception is my sister and her family, hardcore evangelical born-again people. And my sister, I'll be honest, is one of the kindest, most generous people I've ever known in my entire life. She literally works with, her whole career has been working with kids with disabilities. She's now the program manager for youth, at-risk kind of program kind of thing. So she is a really good person. She is also incredibly bigoted towards all of the usual suspects when it comes to evangelical Christians. And I just don't really know how to deal with it at this point. She refuses to use he, him pronouns, instead just uses my name, refers to me as her sibling as opposed to brother, etc. and it just keeps coming up. And I'm not willing to cut off the relationship. Talking about death in the last, 7 years, I've lost mom, dad, stepmom, grandparents. Like, they're all gone. She is virtually the only family I have left. Um, and I know not all Christians are bigoted. I know some activist Christians in the LGBT community who are extremely accepting and amazing allies. And I just don't know if there's anything I can say to my sister to switch her over.
May I ask how you've lost your loved ones? I mean, was it parents to age? Was it tragedy? It sounds like a great many of them have.
Cancer was a big one.
I see.
Got both my stepmom and my dad. My stepmom quite young. My dad at 75-ish, and my mom just passed about 2 years ago, basically to complications of COPD.
Hmm. May I ask when you came to terms with your own gender identity, and how did they respond at the time, mom and dad especially?
So I started figuring things out when I was 40. I was a late bloomer, although I came out as bi when I was 19. So I've always identified as some level of queer. And then I didn't come out till I was 45. But then I speed ran the transition. My dad was shockingly good about it. I've never had a great relationship with my dad. He's anger management problems, to say the least. But he was just like, I don't understand what this is. I just don't. I'm too old, but I don't freaking care in the best possible way. My mom, oddly, although she was born and raised in San Francisco, ended up being the hardest one to deal with. I had to cut off communication with her for about 2 months because it was just like, I can't deal with this. Every time I talk to you, I get angry. Can't do it. But she eventually came around, and when in the independent living place she was at, she eventually introduced me to the people there as her son. So that was really good. My kids have dealt with it really well. My ex, who I still live with, he just did not care at all. So for the most part, things went really well. My sister, there were some bumps, but she decided to not make it a huge issue. So we are very close.
How does the bigotry manifest itself if you're close and it's not a big deal to her, but you're still hearing bigoted things? How do these things manifest?
Okay, so as an example, this just happened last week. We go swimming at the rec center, the sauna. There's always chit chat and talk with everybody, and there was this guy there that has two younger kids, like 12 and 8, and I was just we were talking about trans stuff, and he's like, I just don't think kids should be allowed to make decisions on transitioning. And I said, do you mind if I explain, sort of what transitioning for minors actually looks like? My sister was also there. And so I explained how puberty blockers work, that it doesn't cause sterility, the benefits of it being that, kids who don't have access to puberty blockers get on illegal hormones, which is really not good. That's not a good idea for minors to be doing do-it-yourself transition. Especially where I am, I'm in Canada, in BC, kids do have access to puberty blockers. So with full medical consent and all of that good stuff. And my sister jumps in and goes, well, trans kids can't be trans. She's jumping in with her, and I don't think children should have the right to, dictate their own, what they do until they're fully adults. And so she was jumping in, basically saying, contradicting everything I said. I don't agree with adults doing it, but I can't stop them with her. I think literally is what she said. So that's just an example of the kind of stuff. She's told me she thinks I have a mental illness, that kind of stuff.
And yet you maintain a close relationship. Do you feel like that is you doing most of the stretching because she is one of the last of your bio family?
Yes.
Do you feel that do you get fed emotionally, intellectually? Does having a connection with her, and not a psychologist, but we're just talking, having a connection with her, what does that do for you?
So outside of like the religion and the trans stuff, we are really close. So like we have had for the last like 30 years kind of a policy of just don't, there are topics we can't talk about. We can't talk about abortion. We can't talk about LGBTQ rights. We can't, like, there's some things we can't talk about. But at the same time, there's all the rest of life. We can talk about our kids. We can talk about our work. We can talk about books and movies. So, I mean, we're very, very close outside of those areas, which I mean, she honestly feels like she has said to me, "I'm afraid to talk to you about my religion because at some point you're gonna fly off the handle." Which is like, we've been doing this for 50 fucking years. She's only a year, just over a year younger than me. So
When
we've been
you
doing this for
talk
over
about
50 years.
LGBT issues, does she fly off the handle?
Well, not fly off the handle, no, but I mean, she won't use he him pronouns. So I mean, what is flying off the handle? I mean, I don't get angry at her, but she acts like I could suddenly freak out all over her, which I have never done.
Well, a lot of
Yeah.
that is, I think, her way of discrediting the witness. You're just being emotional, when a
Oh
lot
yeah.
of it might just be, she's projecting some of the high emotions that she is feeling. In my life, understand I've got some relationships now where there are people, and we stand apart on some very important key issues, but I have decades of investment in their lives and theirs in mine. And this sounds odd, but they would give me the shirt off their back. They would
Yeah.
probably advocate for me if somebody was talking poorly about me. They are generous in so many other areas of their lives. But in this one compartmentalized box, it's problematic. And I go
Yeah.
back and forth between, can I overlook this? And then am I part of the problem because I'm allowing it and not drawing the hard line? Or do I maintain the connection, preserve what is there in the hopes that we can enjoy what we have? And then maybe I can be a positive influence along the way to expand their horizons away from those bigotries. And I don't know the right answer, but I'll bet you can relate to everything I just said, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I guess what I was wondering is if because I mean, I have met many like extremely devout Christians who are absolutely 100% like perfect allies. Like in the city where I live, one of the biggest LGBTQ organizers is I mean, I'm assuming he's cis and heterosexual, pastor of a Lutheran church who is, I mean, he is hardcore. He marries queer queer couples and stuff. Like he's as ally as you can get. So it's not a matter of the Christianity. I mean, obviously, I have disagreements on. I mean, I'm a hardcore atheist myself, but obviously I have disagreements with that belief, but as far as the practical application in the world, I have no problem with, somebody like that at all. He's doing amazing work. And I'm just wondering if you know of any methodology. I'm not trying to make my sister not Christian. What I'm trying to make her is ideally not a bigot.
Well, and
And
therein lies the challenge. I have
yeah,
a hardcore evangelical MAGA mother. How do I make her not be a part of the cult? How do you make an addict not addicted to a substance? And that is a
yeah,
burden that we often take on ourselves because we're desperate to see someone else be liberated from bad ideas. But it's not realistic
yeah,
because we can't make anyone do anything. I think all we can do is provide the opportunity and say, here is why I think it would be good and why everybody's life would be better. But you and I are in this situation where we can't make anybody do or think or be anything. And I think for you, all I can tell you is how I would approach it and how I, in my imperfect way, approach it is that if they say, well, I disagree with abortion, and we can have a conversation about reproductive rights, and maybe they invoke the Bible, and I talk about this or that, and the biology of it, and yet they're not in a way coming after me personally, belittling. If we're having a respectful conversation in the way that I might have when I was anti-abortion, then that is easier for me to abide and be around than if somebody came after me and said, "You just want to murder babies, you evil Satanist," right? So I have to have a cost benefit situational conversation every time I engage someone in that way and say, I was once the victim of bad ideas. Will I give them a little bit of latitude because I know overall they are perpetrators of bad ideas, but they're also victims of bad ideas, and they're operating as in their minds as best they can, not out of malice, but because they simply have married themselves to a kind of mythology. And can I maybe help expand that horizon? That makes it easier to hang. But if they're like,
Yeah.
those evil, wicked Satanists, and in your case, those perverse trans people who've messed up God's model and are aberrating the world, and they're targeting our children, et cetera, that's a different conversation. And I think only you can decide how much of that you're willing to abide and tolerate. But if you do end up drawing a harder line, please know that that's not your fault. I think
Yeah.
an authentic life is something that she should want for you. And if in some way she wants to deny you your own autonomy, your validity, your humanity, then that's a line that she drew that has nothing to do with you. She's forced your hand. And for your own safety and mental health, you may have to draw backward. But that's a very intimate and personal conversation that only you can have with yourself. Just know that if you get there, she forced you there and it's not your fault.
Yeah.
Does that help at all, bro?
Yeah. Do you want to hear? Do you have one more minute to make this all more complicated?
Go ahead. Yeah, we'll take a minute.
Super quickly. My youngest child, who is 17, has recently just come out as trans and is still 100% in the closet. I say recently, I mean within the last couple of years.
Sure.
Has come out to friends and his dad and I. And so it's now feeling a lot more high pressure, is because when they come out, that's going to be like whatever level of acceptance of the situation I can have for myself, that's going to be very, very different when we're talking about my kid. And that could get very ugly
Oh,
very,
yeah.
very quickly.
And your child needs that advocacy, right? I mean, and I think
Oh
it
yeah,
sets a good example about authenticity and boundaries. I mean, respect starts with self-respect, and
hmm
so. But if it comes to if it comes to taking the scissors to the cord, I think from my vantage, as best as I can hear, that you are much more interested in coexistence than she may be. And if worse comes to worse, that's simply something that was forced upon you. That decision is not your fault. I think a lot of it may be
yeah,
about self-respect and setting that example of self-respect for those around you, including your child.
yeah,
It's not a professional opinion, but it's an encouragement. And I'm sorry for the trouble that you've had, but I'm glad that you have found who you are and are living authentically. And I hope your life is amazing. Okay.
yeah. Thank you so much, Seth. Have a great day.
Honor speaking with you. Thank you for calling me.
Thanks. Bye bye.
That's people ask me for advice, and I feel hyper unqualified. Excuse me, I'm still sniffling. That's just so dumb. I'm on camera and I'm sitting there with it. Forgive me. Let's see. Because I don't want to sniff into this microphone because that's just gross. Yeah, here's so I had two conversations recently with different people. One person was someone I've known for 35 years, still MAGA. And I reached out and I was like, all right, where's the line? I forgot which atrocity had happened. And I just was like, is this enough for you to say enough? And she hemmed and hawed and hemmed and hawed, right? Because it was going to be Trump regardless. And she's married to the idea. But I didn't think there was bigotry there. I think she was just brainwashed. She'd been Fox Newsed into thinking he was a genius and he loves America because he hugged an actual flag on a pole and he says all the right words and waves a Bible in the air and all that shallow bullshit. She's not a deep thinker about this stuff, I will admit. But I thought, well, I don't think she's trying to be bigoted. And I asked this question. I said, okay, well, if Trump goes on television tomorrow and uses the N-word, would that be enough of a line for you? And she paused. She said, well, it would be wrong. Yeah, I know it would be wrong. Would that be a bridge too far? Would you stand alongside me, shoulder to shoulder, to condemn it? Pause. Well, he's not a perfect man. You can hear she's playing Twister in her brain. You know, we were all imperfect. God sometimes uses imperfect people, and there's some things he says that I just don't like. Yeah. If he uses the N-word, will you stand alongside me and condemn it publicly? And I got a very vague answer. And so I rephrased the question or asked a different question. I said, would you still support him? And she said, yes. That's what I needed to know. Goodbye. We haven't spoken since. The black light at the scene, man. It's exposed the bigotry and the dehumanizing cruelty, the racism, the sexism. People that I'd never expected in my naivety. And I was like, okay, well, Maya Angelou once said, when someone shows you who they are or tells you who they are, believe them. I took the scissors and went, yep, done. Some would disagree and say, no, you got to keep trying. No, not for me, maybe for you. If he said the N-word, I'd still support him. Snip. There's somebody else voted for Trump 3 times. And over the last 12 months has finally started to raise an eyebrow. I don't know who they'd vote for again, but I know that they're having some moments. And they've kind of checked out. Oh, well, I just don't want to think about it. I just don't want to, it's bad. It's bad. I don't know. They're embarrassed. They're embarrassed because they know my stance. And we remain friends. And I'm watching this progression in them while taking a very definitive and hard stand for what I feel is right on my end, publicly coming forward, day after day, time after time, and saying why. And something interesting happened 2 days ago. That person who voted for Trump 3 times sent me a sign that they saw there's a protester over near 71st and Memorial in Tulsa, and they're out there all the time holding up a sign. And I guess he was driving by, saw the sign. He took a phone picture and he texted it to me. The sign said, "Fuck Trump." He didn't put any commentary with it. He didn't say, "There's one of your people." He didn't say, "This is hysterical." He just sent me the picture. So a person who was going through, I think, a crisis, late to the party by a decade, but going through a crisis, sent me a "fuck Trump" sign. That's a relationship I'll continue. There's possibility there. But it's messy. And when people ask, where do I draw the line? I just don't know, because I don't always know in my own life. I don't always know. People are so freaking complicated, aren't they? Speaking of Donald Trump, before I get to my next call, everybody's talking about this big state fair that's been going on. giant 250th America anniversary carnival that's been going on, and there's spectacle of all kinds. And if you look at the pictures, and I brought one here, people are saying that nobody showed up, and it's still going on at the time of this recording. And the photographs show that there are, I don't know, there are exhibits all the way down the mall, or in front of the Capitol, rather. And he's put up this fake arch, this fake triumphal arch, which people are calling the Timu Arch. And there's a smattering of people on the lawn. And so the headline among my fellow liberals is, "Nobody showed up. Look, it's a disaster. Dozens of people celebrating at Trump's MAGA fair." Ha 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 ha. Okay, I understand the emotion of it. This is lazy liberal shit. There's no time code, there's no time stamp on images like these that are being posted. Right? We have to be better than this. I have every desire to see this thing fall flat on its face. Everything he touches dies. Everything he touches becomes algae in the reflecting pool, right? But this could have been pre-event. This could have been during a lull. It could have been, you and I are creatures of context. And so what happens is, in the instances where we look at this and we knee jerk and we say, look, nobody showed up. And that very well may be true. But if we can't bring receipts and we get busted, we look like the idiots. And they have another piece of ammo in their Fox News gun. And it matters. Facts matter. It was the other 98% page, which is a high emotion, progressive, liberal, Democrat page. And I appreciate their verve. They're lazy. The stuff they post is just lazy. And there are many who would get mad at me for directing criticism toward my own camp when there's so much happening over here that's even worse, blah, blah, blah. Not us, but them. How dare you? How dare you point to the speck in our eye when they have a log in their eye? That's bullshit. We are creatures of the evidence. So it may be an accurate photograph from the middle of the day when this thing is supposed to be going heyday in full swing. It might be true, or this might have been taken before they even opened officially, or a couple minutes after, and then people show. Give me timestamps, give me some code, give me some context. We owe the conversation accuracy, and that's not unfair. Not unfair. Jonathan is dialing in from a web call. Jonathan, welcome. What's on your mind? You're on a web call, and so you may have to tap your phone to activate the audio so I can hear you. And if I need to, I'll put you back in the queue. But if you can hear me, but I cannot hear you, tap your phone to reactivate. Are you there? Back in the queue. My apologies, Jonathan. Did the best I can. I've got Dawn dialing in, DAWN dialing in from 231. Are you there?
Yeah, sorry. I forgot the S. It's Sean.
Sean. I'm sorry. It's an auto screen process, so I'm sure the speech to text was wrong, and therefore I was as well. Sean, I'm glad you're here. Let's talk. What's on your mind?
Appreciate it. Just full disclaimer. I myself am Christian.
Yeah.
Not college educated by any stretch. Grew up on a farm, joined the military, so I'm not eloquent, and I have a tendency to cuss a lot. So I hope you're okay with that.
Well, the Lord works in mysterious ways. What's going on, Sean? What do you want to talk about?
Oh, yeah. So I've been trying to sort of listen to different secular atheistic podcasts and just sort of understand your guys' position, and just so I don't know, I guess I can be better rounded as a person, for lack of a better word.
I respect that.
And I've been listening to you. You talked to the previous individual about bigotry among Christian family members and this and that. Just to kind of posit like possibly another perspective. Do you believe that, say, for example, the LGBTQ community has an because we talk about society's obligation to use preferred pronouns and this and that. Do you believe that the LGBTQ community has an obligation to society to conform to societal standards?
Well, I think societies are made up of different groups. I think we can be part of a society, but also still be a diverse and authentic individual. Also, I'm not sure that society has an obligation to use preferred pronouns. I just think it's the human thing to do. It doesn't cost
Well,
me
I mean,
anything if someone wants to be referred to as he, him, or she, her, or they. It doesn't cost me anything.
well, but I mean, sure, but by that standard, it doesn't cost the person who goes by different pronouns to be pronoun incorrectly. It's the same thing.
If someone,
It's just
if
personal preference, and whose preference wins out.
Sean, if I say, look, I want to be called Tim, I don't like Seth. Tim's my name. For all practical purposes, it's how I want to be identified. But my legal name is Seth, and Tim is nowhere on my birth certificate. The humanistic
Sure.
thing to do is to say, no problem, Tim. I'll call you later, Tim. Have a good day,
Yeah.
Tim. Right? It costs you nothing.
Sure.
And I don't think it's really all that different. Someone has an identifier that they prefer. Doesn't cost you anything to use it.
Well,
And it doesn't mean that I've changed your name, Sean. You're still Sean.
right. No, I totally agree. Do you think pronouns are identifier or descriptor?
They can be both, aren't they? I mean, my name identifies me, but
I would say they're strictly a descriptor.
in this context, because we are assigning them to ourselves, I think they can be both. More than one thing can be true at the same time, right?
Do you assign pronouns to yourself, or is it simply a statement of what exists?
I think either could be true. I myself identify as a he. But if I realize that I am not comfortable with that, it's not a good fit for me, I then can mold that to be identified in a way that better suits my gender identity. And then other people hopefully will respect that. Again, I'm not
Right.
sure where the point of contention is for you. Like, why,
Well,
what is it
my point.
Go ahead.
Sorry. So my point of contention is, for example, take your previous caller, and I understand he's not here to defend the position, and you are not that person, but you literally gave him the advice. Well, if this person who, for the record, listening to the phone call, it sounds like their aunt was nothing but cordial within the compliance with their own belief system, which happened to disagree with the caller's belief system.
Hang on,
There's
Sean. Hang on,
objectively
Sean.
wrong with
Sean.
that.
Sean. His sister.
Yeah.
His sister said he was mentally ill. Tell me what's cordial about that.
And did I mean, up until 5 minutes ago, the CDC recognized.
Hang on.
Yeah.
What's
Sorry.
cordial about you're mentally ill? What's cordial about that?
Is it a statement of fact? I would suggest that someone who performs genital mutilation is not
here
a
we go.
sound state of mind.
So you don't believe that gender identity is a spectrum, like so many other attributes of human beings. Sexuality. There are so many different layers to that onion, and you in your mind say someone who is attempting to simply live their life without harming anybody else, to be true to themselves and live authentically. Your first thought, or one of your first thoughts, are you've mutilated your body, which, by the way, a lot of trans people do not have gender reassignment, right? They don't go there. So that's not part of the conversation. But your next thought is,
Okay.
You are mentally ill. Do you think that's fair, Sean?
Do you think it's unfair?
I do think it's unfair. And how does it affect you in any way negatively? How does it affect you if somebody else says, I'd like to be identified by this name, I'm more comfortable expressing myself in this way. What does that take away from you? Why do you care?
Well, I mean, I would say personally, I care about its effects in society and the objective reality of truth.
Hang on.
I prefer to live in a society where truth matters. I think that is a genuinely good thing.
So,
Um,
so where does your objective truth come from, Sean?
well, I mean, I was already um, pretty honest, straightforward. I'm Christian. I believe that there is a God. I believe there is an Imago Dei, and I think that we can derive morality from that.
Okay, maybe you can, but I'm not a Christian and I don't
Uh-huh.
require Christianity. I don't require the Bible. I don't require any religion to have a
Sure.
value system or see the world, nor do I believe that the Bible has provided any kind of objective moral standard. And I know my Bible. So on this, you and I simply
So
disagree. Now, you can show up by matter of declaration and say, oh, shit,
mhm.
so and so's not living by my rules set in place by my religion, but nobody else has to respect that. And honestly, it's your personal faith. You have a relationship with Jesus, knock yourself out. I'll fight for your right to be a Christian. And that ends at the tip of your nose.
What if my right to be?
It ends at
What
the
if my
tip
right to
of
be?
your nose,
Go
man.
ahead. Sorry.
It ends at the tip of your nose, right? It doesn't.
So you believe morality is strictly subjective personal preference?
I don't know if it's subjective or there are some objective. Yeah, we've had this conversation with ethicist Aaron Rabinowitz, but I do see ethics
Mhm.
as part of our evolution, pro-social behaviors. I don't think it's unethical to be LGBT. And I certainly am not going to base that opinion if I thought I'm not going to base that in the Bible because no one knows who wrote
All right.
any of the words in that book. We've seen the apologists across the board for 2,000 years disagree on what the book actually says. And for the things that we do understand, there's all kinds of problematic hashtag moral behaviors and commands and edicts in there. The execution of children, human sacrifice, slavery, hell theology. Come on. These were primitive men
I
who
mean,
didn't fully understand
I'm
humankind and the
sure we
world.
could dive into all of that, but that's a little outside the point.
If you're going to
Um,
say this is my foundation, but the foundation has nothing but cracks in it, how can we remove it from the conversation?
well, because my foundation is based on human value. You literally just said morality is derived from evolution, which means you don't have a moral ought. You have a derivative of human behavior, which you don't get an ought from. You just simply get a descriptor.
I think we understand the concepts of harm because we have felt harm. We also
Really?
understand, hang on,
So
we also understand
okay, go ahead.
that pro-social behaviors which benefit others also reflect back on us. We are stronger together when we act in pro-social ways. And while there are aberrations out there, we survive and thrive much better when we are kinder and more moral and work together. No religion required. None.
Well, I mean, I would argue that you just smuggled in a bunch of religious terms
No, I
into
didn't.
that critique, but
Religion
you
has
did.
religion has
You
hijacked.
presuppose moral, you presuppose a moral ought, you presuppose, like, let's just take harm, for example. Okay, let's say I agree with your thing of, or let's just produce less harm. Okay, I say less harm is let's not mutilate children, and let
No one's
what
arguing
benefits
mutilation of
society is
children. I
reproduction.
think we were clear about that in
Uh,
the conversation. No one's arguing gender
well,
reassignment
so
surgery. Hey, I'm
yeah,
going to finish
I
this
mean,
sentence,
there was a
Sean,
lot
whether
of
I mute your call or not. I'm going to finish my point. Secondly,
okay, go ahead.
secondly, you have just assigned to Christianity morality. You've married those two, and then you're saying, well, I snuck in religion when I was talking about ethics and pro-social behaviors. But I don't think that's the case.
Mhm.
I think religion hijacked those from humanity. So you and I simply disagree. At the end of the day, and you and I can go around and around and around, these people are
Sure.
taking nothing from you. You just think they're icky and you don't want to share the country or the world with them. I mean, be honest with yourself about that. And I think you may be using your religion to excuse the fact that you're uncomfortable.
Okay. Um, let me, do you mind if I explore that a little bit?
Yeah, we'll take a few minutes. Go ahead, as long as the listeners are good. I'll watch the
All
chat
right.
and let them vote, but keep talking. I'll let's give this conversation a little more oxygen. Sure.
All right. So let's go back to the harm. All right. And human flourishing. I say human flourishing is it's derived from an understanding of human value, and also is carried forward through reproduction. Now, as a society, do you believe that, or I'm sorry, as a individual, do you think that there are individual obligations to society?
Hang on. What do you mean by through reproduction?
I think that there is an obligation that, I mean, because there's certainly, if you simply want to talk about humanity and human flourishing, reproduction is a big part of that. Otherwise, we cease to exist.
I think if we see flourishing only as continuation, but what about a flourishing of our finite existence? Let's say that we lost all the ability to reproduce, and I only had 40 years left. Let's say I had 40 years left. My goal to flourish, to reduce suffering and increase the joy, that's not negated by the fact that I couldn't have kids and that there would be no next generation. Flourishing could happen in the here and now in the finite, could it not?
I'd have a hard time getting behind that, because then again, it becomes your opinion versus my opinion. So if we limit it down to the finite and say humanity has another 40 years left because everyone's sterile, now all of a sudden human flourishing is just personal preference, because there is no long-term a thing. So therefore, if my personal preference is harming another person, there's no possible way you can tell me I'm wrong.
If I say, hey, Sean, I'm going to buy you 2 hours in the spa, and you're going to go and you're going to get a massage and a facial, and you're going to get soft music, and they're going to give you wine or beer or coffee or whatever you're going to be pampered outright for 120 minutes.
Right.
It's on me, pal. You
Yep.
enjoy that.
Mhm.
Or if I say, hey, Sean, I'm going to show up at your hat with a machete, and I'm going to hack your ass to pieces. Tell me you don't understand that one of those is harm.
One of those is harm to me as an individual, but is a harm to, I mean, granted, what if,
hang on, and anybody else who understands what a blade does, what the nervous system does, what suffering and harm and violence is, which is all of us,
right,
we understand the difference between help and harm.
And my body will still be made up of the same amount of molecules it was before you inflicted this quote unquote harm to me. All right. And now let's say, for example, I mean, because at the end of the day, the only difference between pain versus joy is a chemical reaction in the brain.
So what?
So if I say, I'm sorry?
So what? Whatever the trigger is that causes me to feel something, so what? I'm still feeling it. You know, and by the way, I find it interesting that you put quote unquote around the machete attack. I mean, why would you put quote unquote around the around a machete attack? That's all I'm saying.
Did I put it around the machete attack or around harm?
You're talking about harm in the context that I just gave you. Look, man, I don't want to frustrate our people because I don't run a debate show, but I think you and I simply disagree that morality needs Christianity. We disagree that anyone identifying in any other way cheats you. And I don't think society has an obligation to keep you comfortable. I don't want to live in a society that does this. You know, that and $5 will get you a cup of coffee at Starbucks. Man, you are not the moral arbiter of what other people do. And the more we learn about the wide, wild spectrum of humanity, the more we see there is diversity, there are new ideas, and we should celebrate the spectrum of people, where they are and who they are. You know, you would want someone to respect your right to identify as a Christian and to be who you are and live your faith, knock yourself out. They're simply asking for the same equal respect in return. That's not a big ask, Sean. Okay? That's not a big ask.
I will 1,000% agree with you that society does not owe anybody anything. So, but anyway, a good conversation, man.
Thank you.
Hope you have a good day.
See ya.
Yep.
I'm looking at the chat. All right. How we doing? No, we didn't shout at each other. I mean, yeah, obviously I'm a momentum guy, so I'm listening for specific things and trying to jump in. I do some of this when I host or co-host On the Line, which is a debate show, and I'm given the opportunity to either host or co-host there once or twice a month. And they take calls from a great many theists, and we go back and forth. It's a balancing act. You want to be able to give the conversation oxygen, but you also want to make sure that we're not getting off into the weeds and we're not driving everybody who is listening and watching crazy. So I did my best with that. But I mean, to hear that perspective and to push back and challenge, I think, yeah, spread some light, spread some heat. And people like this audience and that person, Sean's audience, whatever that might be, Sean's circle, they can decide for themselves. David is dialing in from 562. Thanks for your patience. What's up?
Hey, Seth.
Welcome.
So I've got an idea that, or let me just, I'm a little nervous. I've never called into a show before. But
You're fine.
I'll start with this. I'm convinced, but trying to stay open-minded, that all living things require the death and suffering of other living things to survive. I think that this is the nature of living things, with the exception for living things that do chemosynthesis and photosynthesis. But I think this is just the nature of life. And I think it's pretty crazy that it's the nature of life, and I accept it. I also genuinely think that the human species has potential to overcome this, this being causing suffering and death to other living things to survive. Does that train of thought comport with reality?
Well, we may be beyond my pay grade. I'm having a hard time thinking of a great many living things. I mean, the squirrel who is harvesting the acorn is not causing suffering to the tree, is he?
No, but I would say that it is the acorn was at one point living and is now becoming sustenance for another living thing.
But the acorn is not a sentient creature, right? The bee that is spreading pollen from flower to flower is, pollination does not cause suffering. So I'm not trying to be too pedantic, but I think if I can show you a couple little pinholes in the theory, then the rest of the theory may reveal itself as more problematic. I'm not convinced at all that we all must cause suffering to survive and thrive ourselves. We certainly do see that. We see it throughout the wild, and we have seen human beings perpetrating suffering for our own gain, etc. But I don't think that's true at all across the board. I think it's case by case, situation by situation.
Right, and I do agree with you. Like I was saying, there's organisms at the bottom of the ocean that do chemosynthesis, and of course, plants are doing photosynthesis. And we get milk from cows or honey from beehives, and that's not ultimately causing suffering or death to that being that's producing it. But on, I would say, generally, I would accept that is the case, while being open-minded to understand that. I don't know, maybe I'm just looking at the big picture too much. Like I said, I still understand that there are organisms that don't do that.
Well, an open mind, I think, is important to this type of discussion. And as we scan the horizon for examples of how we, enhance ourselves and evolve ourselves and reproduce ourselves, I think we can ask ourselves the question, has suffering been involved or has flourishing been involved? Have we actually done something that makes things and people and other creatures better? Because I think there are many examples of that. It is an interesting question, David. I'll let the chat take over on that one, okay?
All right, thanks.
Appreciate you calling very much. Thank you. Clarice is dialing in. Welcome to the show. Thanks for waiting. Clarice, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
I can indeed. Let's talk. What's on your mind?
Well, I want to thank you for providing an open discussion for such matters so that people can open themselves up to talking to other people, and by providing a forum where argument is not the point.
Which matters in
share
question,
ideas.
Clarice? Forgive me for interrupting, but what matters are we into here?
Well, I myself am a trans woman.
Okay.
I am married to another trans woman. I transitioned. I'm now 70. I transitioned about 10 years ago, and I have my background involves being in my youth a leader in one of the major denominations in the United States. I even led a work camp to Alaska to double the size of a church in Soldotna, Alaska. So it's not like I hadn't dedicated myself to being upright and righteous as many would define it. I also have the experience of having having a lived a life where I've tried not to be what I am. And that led me to an identity crisis of such enormous mass that really it was me or that bridge I was thinking about jumping off of. And, it occurred to me, well, what happens? You break everything, but your brain's still there, and, it's still full of poop. So why not deal with your brain first? Get everything organized, and then come at people at a reasonable level. And that, I've been successful. I mean, I worked in businesses for over 50 years, sold software all across the world. So it didn't hurt me that I was trans as long as I was able to be employed. It didn't change my ability to communicate. I would give some points to people from my own personal experience. I'm not a fussy person about pronouns. And what I do say to people is, call me by my first name. Because every trans person, every person of diversity, if they're making a big deal out of pronouns, it's because you're not making a big enough deal out of who they are. And so arguing over pronouns is a little bit like arguing over ego. Ego is what usually presents us our fears into the world. Well, if you don't honor me, then I don't have leverage over you. I look at something completely different. How do we talk to the person on the other side? How do we talk not to their mask, but to behind the mask? And in each case, when we sometimes look at religion sometimes just, we've got cognitive dissonance, we've got anxiety, and it just adds to both of those issues and makes us make decisions that sound confused. We call up, or we're talking to other people, and most of the time we're arguing about how broken the world is rather than seeing ourselves in other people. And so I really am very thrilled to see that you undertake these conversations on all different types of discussion levels. I'm also I have a kind of a different point of view about Christianity and its beginnings, and most people follow Paul's perspectives on that. I kind of felt like Paul was doing his own thing, and when I think of how the person that Paul says he follows spoke, for that person, behavior was equaled your faith. And that was based on Habakkuk 5, which is one of the smaller books of the Old Testament. But in that, it says that faith is based on the law, and not just the law, but the spirit of the law. We live in a country in America where the law, we have people fighting over how we formulate laws rather than figuring out how to live in the spirit of our laws in the United States and the spirit of our spiritual laws if you are a spiritual person or if you're a moral person. So how do we see light in another person? What is light? Light is what we see in the behavior of other people. When you see a person who you can see that they bring peace to an argument, that they settle issues, that they don't get into the arguments in the first place, you're seeing light in their actions. And so for me, when I see a person with your balance, your ability to listen and listen positively, it's very inspirational to me.
Oh my gosh. Well, you're very kind. Thank you for that. Yeah. I don't know. We can talk about Paul, who I find tremendously problematic. I think when you say light, much of that I think speaks to attitude and intent, which is the mind and heart. And there are people often, even with those with bad ideas, who are operating in good faith. And that's a lot different than somebody who is coming at you with malice or, some ill intent. I'm also with you, and this is a bit unpopular among some of my fellow lefties, and I'm a lefty, I'll just say it outright. But, some people, I feel like pronouns in a lot of ways, especially in some of these forward facing broadcasts, become a bit of there's gatekeeping going on. So if someone calls in, but they don't give a pronoun or they don't want to acknowledge a pronoun at the beginning of whatever other conversation they wanted to have, the host will shut them down and say, oh, we're not even going to validate you. We're not going to have this conversation unless you say that, unless you choose one, or we're going to ridicule you for not choosing one. And I find that's a bit dogmatic. I think it often happens for noble reasons because we want to advocate for those who have been marginalized, and we want to say we see those who are identifying in different ways. But I don't like the fact that we can become very dogmatic. If somebody says, I'm not going to go there, I can step over that pebble to maybe get into a deeper, larger conversation. Is that also fair, Clarice, from your perspective?
I think so. I'll tell you why, and that is that uh, I don't think the main point is that if you're trans or intersex, you really don't have any control over what's happened to you. It's not a choice. It's something that it's made on if it's made in any kind of a realm above our cellular level, which obviously it is, the brain is affected by transsexual like to have different sections of the brain which are of different size, and that determines how often in the last trimester the effect of hormones cause a mismatch between the size of these organs within the brain, these glands within the brain, which actually are the best determinant of what gender you will later represent and later live out. And men, those structures are larger, and in females they are smaller, and in trans people they're often slightly in between. And so because of that, it's not uncommon for a trans person to start out their life gendered by their mother because she sees them come out and then says, oh, you're this or you're that. But then as they get older, as their neuroplasticity expands until you're 26, 25 or 26, it keeps going on. So when you're born, children don't even see. They hear, they feel. So for the first 10 years of a child's life, it's going on pattern identification. The most important thing to a child is friends, is security and rewards. If you are in your childhood and you are affected by a family that threatens any of those three, you're going to carry that into your adult life, and it will seen in you when you're an adult. But neuroplasticity accounts for much of the developmental issues that we see of people recognizing that they are trans later on, because the longer you've got it, the more you get irritated by it. At first, you try to fit in, but your brain is doing what I call crosstalk. You're saying to yourself, you will take situations you're in and explain them to other people. In order to be, in my case, I was born with a male body at that point, but my thinking, my reactions to things were feminine. And so what I tried to do is I tried to justify by overcompensating for even as in that situation, I had to be stronger than strong in order to reduce my risk of being outed, right?
Yeah.
And that happened to me even the very first time I was in a bathroom, in a changing room in elementary school, when we were taking off all our clothes, and I'm surrounded by all these boys with their obvious accoutrements. And I'm sitting there and completely, totally freaked out, right? So in my fall, I even had complications that came after that, because I lived in a very religious family with a very religious mother, and this mother came in. She would hunt me around the house when I was a young person. She came in eventually and beat me for about 15 to 20 minutes with my father's belt. My father had been in the same room with me and my brother at one point and said, if either of you touch your mother or have anything to do with your mother that's not right, it'll be the day that I lovingly strangle you to death. Okay? So I've seen the face of religious justification, of being just in yourself, of walking around thinking that you are God's angel. But I also realize that isn't God in them. It's misunderstanding. It's confusion. And if you are trans, you are not going. Nobody wants to be trans. You are. You have to deal with it. And so that's what's missing in the United States to a great deal, is that people don't understand the nature of it, because people are on our side are not explaining it. It's not a choice. You can't choose this stuff. You wouldn't choose to be treated like dirt by people who have no experience with your situation, or to walk into a place and have somebody. I mean, I would much rather walk into a place dressed like the nines, looking wonderful, and then have everybody treat me like a normal person. And that's what most trans people are all about. They want to be treated as normal people. And just a little viewpoint into my life, I live in Germany for 34 years now. Nobody makes a difference in Germany if you're trans or not. I live in a little farm community. Everybody treats me, treats my wife, treats any other trans person in this little dwarf like we are their besties. We are all cut from the same cells, from the same cloth. And so it's hard for me to just go through list. I feel sorry for you in a way, because you listen to people say, well, don't you believe this? Don't you believe that? Don't believe that. Who is the judge?
Yeah.
Why do we take the time to judge rather than love?
I'll tell you this.
Love.
I've had a lot of people invoking God to judge and be awful. And I've had, I with one exception, I've never met a trans person who was anything other than kind and generous and wonderful. And, doesn't it come down to the human heart? And what does it take away from me, right? So I appreciate your heart so much. And you're like me. I mean, coming out of my faith, I was a late bloomer, but I kind of found my own voice. It sounds like you got there eventually too, and that inspires me. And I'm thankful for your voice on the show today. Anything else before I move on?
No, just I would say to anybody who's out meeting with other people, do not argue with somebody. Try to find what you have in common with somebody. If you want to move them in a different direction, just say to them, "Have you ever? Isn't it funny how?" And then you can mention something that means something to you. But if that other person doesn't identify with you when you say, "Yeah, isn't it funny how?" If you don't know how to bring somebody else close to you without being in conflict, then you're looking at the world as broken. And the world isn't broken. You can look at people as facts. You're still being a judge. When you realize that everybody has suffered as children and learned to be what they are as adults, then you'll all know that we all have reasons to be the way we are. But we are all of the same unity. We're all of the same body, spirit, mind. We may not all have the same ideas or beliefs, but we're all coming from one place. And that's why if there's only two commandments, and that wise person in Israel once said, love your God and love the other person exactly as you would love yourself. That means unity. You have to see everyone else as you, as an expression of what you have or don't have, yes, but you do not have a right to sit in the judgment seat and say to someone else, you're invalid, because we don't have that choice. We are born, and everybody who's here who's alive was successful. Their parents all were successful. They made it. We were babies.
Yeah.
We were all successful.
Well,
So the people who weren't successful, they don't live. So bring life to this life. That's what we should do, because that's what life is all about.
You're very kind to call the show. Thank you so much for an eloquent conversation. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. See you later. Forgive me. I was just a little bit. I'm moving over here because I just had a partial recording error that I would like to fix before I move on to my next call. Hold, please. If I can't get it in 2 minutes, we'll just move on. Play. Found it. One moment. Lovely. Okay, good. Your patience is much appreciated. Cat has not howled in an hour. That's good. No one has approached or crossed the line of my security camera. That's good. My boundaries have not been violated. By the way, a lot of people enjoy this little piece of trivia. So after we had some little church lady and her kids ring the doorbell, and it was a windy day, and I went out front. The door was pushed shut by the wind and broke Linus's arm, his little paw, in 2 places. And that was a big, 3 months in a cast. It was a nightmare. I was like, well, no soliciting signs hardly ever work when you put them in your yard or on your door. In fact, salespeople, when they come by, those who are not family members or neighbors or who someone you would welcome, the signs are invisible. So I had my own sign made, and also I brought it up for the YouTube viewers, but I'll read it for the audio listeners. It says no soliciting at the top. And then it says, if we wanted it, we've already bought it. We've heard about Jesus. We know how we're voting. The doorbell agitates the dogs, and we're probably watching Netflix. If you're not a friend, neighbor, package delivery, or selling Thin Mints, we're not interested. Thank you. Well, am I pleased with myself over I kind of am. And it's amazing because as I'm in the studio and I'm watching the monitor with the camera, how many solicitors, and they're selling everything from weed control to alarm systems to lawn, or whatever, roof repair, guttering, or insurance, who knows what they're selling. You can see they walk up and their finger goes out to the doorbell, and then they see the sign and they stoop down to read it, and they stand up and they blink once or twice. They either smile or they just look blank, turn around and walk away. I feel a sense of real satisfaction about that. So anyway, you can make these. You just go and say like homemade sign, this is a small metal sign, 6x9, and you have it made, and then they ship it to you from Etsy or whatever, and you put a little string or a cord on it and just hang it on your front door. It's awesome. And the neighbors even know about it because when they stop by, they're like, Seth's got an awesome sign. Let's talk to Gail, who is dialing in from 702. Hi, Gail. Thanks for calling. What's up?
Hi. Do you know the YouTube series Beyond the Believing Mind?
Beyond the Believing Mind. No, I don't think I've ever heard of it.
It is absolutely, I'm a fan, and it's absolutely exactly what you teach, only with all the details, and done in a very, very non-judgmental way, but just based on facts. A lot of it's based on Spinoza, but it's just the facts. And it talks a lot about things that would be right out of your bailiwick.
Beyond the Believing Mind. Okay.
I usually end up watching your videos after they happen. I watch them a great deal, but I happen because I have a little empathy with you right now because we had a flood in our house that is finally, 6 months later, finally recovered. But I fell and got an injury, and I'm old. And I'm stuck in front of the television because that's about all I can handle right now. And I would have just put it into the comment section, but I don't have access to it because I'm not on my computer.
I'm glad you called. Beyond the Believing Mind. All right. Well, when the dust settles here, I'll make a note to go check it out. Okay, Gail?
I think it's going to make you happy and keep you busy for quite a while. And I'm hoping that a couple of the listeners, you had some really interesting listeners just before me. And one of them, I hope, is hearing this so that they look for it too. This is exactly the kind of thing that will cause people to start to think. And that's what the Thinking Atheist is all about, right?
All right. Beyond the Believing Mind. Nice pitch. Thanks for the call. Have a wonderful day and get well soon, okay?
Same to you.
All righty. Bye. Gail and I, we have similar stories because whenever I was pushing the water out the front door, I slipped and I broke the knuckle of the middle finger of my left hand, and I just stopped wearing the brace. But it's hard to bend, and I guess it takes 7 months, 8 months to fully heal, and I don't know why. But for a while, I was just walking around like this all the time with it wasn't a cast, but it was like a middle finger metal brace. And I just walked around flipping everybody off. But it's just a slow heal. One of those things. I don't know if it's slow because of my advanced age. I don't know if that's true or not. A couple of notes about shows. I was just invited to appear on a series called World Views. They say they talk to religious leaders, skeptics, authors, creators, activists, public intellectuals. I'm not that. But they want to talk to me about my journey out of Christianity. So I don't know if they're religious or not, but I asked around to a few other activists who had heard of them. and they say they think they're legit and it's not an ambush. So apparently, I will be one of their guests moving forward. I am releasing, and for my audio listeners, it will already be out, a fun broadcast about mondegreens, which are those song lyrics that you and I hear, but we hear them wrong, and we learn them wrong, and we remember them wrong, and we sing them wrong on the order of decades. And you're thinking of a song right now, already in your brain, a song where you're like, I still don't know what it says, but I've been singing it this way, right? Excuse me while I kiss this guy. Down, 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 down. Hendrix, right? And there's tons of them, and they have become known as mondegreens. So, as a break from all of these heavy topics, religion and politics, I did a whole show where I play nothing but clips. And then we get into some brain science about why our pattern seeking minds are filling in blanks often incorrectly. And in very entertaining ways, we learn things wrong. And it's fascinating science, and it's a fun show. So if you are watching in video, it comes out in 2 days. And if you are listening in podcast, it should be one of the previous shows. Just scroll back in your podcast app, and it's called I'm Farting Carrots, Misheard Lyrics in the Mind. And that comes from a Selena Gomez song called 14 Carat. She's singing I'm 14 Carat, but people are singing I'm Farting Carrots. So I thought, what a great show name. So it's called I'm Farting Carrots, raising the bar, taking the high. It's a classy broadcast, is it not? Farting Carrots. Let's take a look at, you doing good for time? I've got time. And so I figure maybe we'll just continue to share the moments and fellowship in the Lord. I've got 216. Hi, what's your name?
Sharon.
Sharon, I can barely hear you. Speak nice and loud for me. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Sharon. Yes, I'm here.
Okay,
Yes.
hit it.
Can you hear me now?
I can. What's on your mind?
Okay. So, yeah, I've run into you at a couple of conferences and chatted with you and enjoyed our interactions. But some years ago, and I'm a senior citizen, so back in the 80s, I had met my fiance, who's been my husband for a long time, and his sister joined a religious organization that we thought was incredibly freaky. It was a covenant community, a Catholic covenant community, the one that the Supreme Court justice belongs to, and I'm not going to name it, but you can look it up and figure it out.
Hang on just a second for me, if you would. The call is extremely muffled. It almost sounds like you're speaking through a pillow. It may just be our connection.
Okay. You know what? I've got a let me switch to my phone.
You're very kind. I'm sorry for the trouble, but I want to make sure that everybody can be heard, especially you.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
If you need to dial me back, I can look for your number and just make you a priority and bring you back in. Would it be easier?
I'll dial back. Yeah, I want to talk about the genetics of religiosity.
Okay, yeah, I'd love to have that conversation, but let's make sure everybody can hear,
All right.
including your
I'll
host.
call back on a different device.
All right, have your people call my people. Thanks. All right, see you. Yeah, I think let's do some due diligence there and make sure that everybody can hear. 216, I'm going to wait for that to reappear. What else was I going to bring up? Something that popped into my mind. I guess I can go ahead and slug the event on July the 11th with No Illusions and myself. Anderson Theater, Cincinnati, Ohio. Tickets still available. Go to thethinkingatheist.com/events and you'll see the whole laundry list of things that are going on. There's a 216. Sharon is back, but is she clear? Are you there?
I don't know. Am I
Oh,
clear?
come on. That's so much better. It's a miracle. It's a miracle.
It's a miracle. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I switched from my headphones to my
Hallelujah.
iPhone.
Hallelujah. Praise you, Jesus. It's a miracle. Sharon,
Thank thee.
let's talk about the genetics of religiosity.
Yeah. So yeah, I was saying that back in the early '80s, when I first met my fiance and his family, his sister, who he was very close to, joined a religious group, a covenant community, a very Catholic covenant community that was in the news when a Supreme Court justice got nominated. So anyway, she's still in that community, but when she joined it, my husband was very concerned about his sister, and I did some research on the group, and I got some information from the Cult Information Network, and I shared that with my at the time future father-in-law, who was a very very intelligent man, and we were expressed concern about my sister-in-law's mental health joining this kind of extreme group that kind of scared us. And he said back, he says, her problem is genetic. Her mother was very religious and belonged to an intense community, which she drifted away from after she married me. So there's nothing we can do about this because it's genetic. And I thought that sounded really crazy to me. But I went on to study psychology, and I came across the twins separated at birth information, and found out that, back before birth control, there were a lot more children available for adoption than homes wanting children. And it was pretty routine to separate identical twins because twins were most likely to be returned to the orphanage because infant twins are hard to take care of. So they would separate them. And then the researchers in the 80s and 90s began finding these adults now who were separated at birth to study them, nature and nurture. If you're identical, but you grew up in a different environment, how much do you have in common with your identical twin who has the same genome as you? And one of the things that struck me was that identical twins who are reared separately both tend to have the same level of religiosity. Not religion, they could be raised in different communities and be completely different religions, but how involved in their religion they are, how important religion is to them, and how much time they spend with religion seem to be very similar, and it seemed to have a genetic component. And I continued to study psychology. I'm now a retired school psychologist, and I taught at a community college for a while. So I was always kind of, I've never been a researcher, but I've always been keeping up with the literature and the findings. And there's a component or one type of obsessive compulsive behavior. Now, compulsive means you do something like wash your hands over and over again, and obsessive means you think about something a lot. And there's a obsessive behavior called scrupulosity, where a person worries about what they're thinking all the time. And religion, and quite often has a religious bent. It's like, oh, I had a bad thought, I need to pray. I need to talk to God, or I need to, and if it's a compulsion, they may need to get on their knees, they need to pray, or they need to do a ritual, or they need to sprinkle themselves with water. And I mean, a lot of times this is not it doesn't reach the level of mental health disorder. I know myself, I tend to knock on wood when I say something like, oh, I've been pretty healthy lately and we seem to be financially secure. Knock on wood, make sure that stays. And so, I mean, a little bit of it's not a mental health problem, but there does seem to be a genetic component to it. And that obsessive compulsive tendency does play into religion quite a bit, and there is a genetic component to it. So I'm wondering and does religion maybe become the mental illness, or does mental illness grab onto religion to kind of justify the symptoms? It's very hard to sort out.
Well, psychology is not my sandbox. I do know there is a lot of research out there. A great example are people who lean toward like high control conservatism. You find personality types, people who are, let's call it genetically wired to have certain tendencies, tend to gravitate in certain ways. So we find that people on the far right, they tend to travel less. They are more locked into routine and find security. They resist new experiences and risk. They are more germ averse. They're more afraid of whatever might be coming over the horizon. Now, obviously, it's extremely complicated, but it helps to explain that there is a nature nurture combination that might help us to explain why some people live their lives in such limited ways, while other people who are more open to experience in the human spectrum and who aren't terrified of what's under every rock and all those things, they end up with different value systems and they see the world and live in the world in very different ways. And I think religion may be part of that. I don't think religion or religious people are mentally ill. I think there may be reasons across the gamut that people become religious. Childhood indoctrination, maybe they're caught at a vulnerable time, maybe they have not been properly taught how to think, but have been told what to think. Well, that's not a mental illness. That is simply ignorance and the lack of training of the mind to think. When I think mental illness, I I I I see memes about this, and I know this is not where you're going, Sharon, but all the mentally ill people are at church is something that the atheist meme verse likes to jump onto, and I just hate it because I wasn't mentally ill when I was a 30-year Christian. I was a victim of bad ideas and I was ignorant, and that ignorance was fixed. My IQ didn't change, my mental capacities didn't change, my information and what I was doing with it changed, my attitudes changed. But it's
Yeah.
an interesting thing to talk about maybe what are our genetic predispositions to how we live in the world and where does that send us? Where do we feel most comfortable? I think that's an interesting conversation, Sharon.
Yeah, well, I didn't mean to imply that religion was a mental illness, but
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
just saying that some people who are mentally ill, schizophrenics quite often have religious hallucinations,
Yeah, I'll buy that.
and people with extreme obsessive compulsive disorder have a religious tick or quirk that they practice as part of their mental health problem. And I can see just as much that sometimes a religious practice can be a stabilizing and a healthy influence. Like Alcoholics Anonymous has religious overtones, and it does help people deal with addictive behavior. So it's like it is a very complicated issue. But I think, and that right wing, left wing thing too, is I think the people that are drawn to religiosity and the people are maybe drawn to right wing authoritarian um, uh, political beliefs there's something called locus of control. It's like, do you feel in control of your life? Do you feel like you can make your own choices? You can influence your own future? Do you feel confident that if you have a problem, you can solve it? Then you have an internal locus of control. You know what, I'm not doing well in school, I just need to study harder and my grades will go up. Or I'm not doing well in school because I'm just not cut out for academics. It would be an external locus of control. And so the internal locus of control people are much more likely, I think, to be comfortable with agnosticism and atheism and left-wing ideology, where the external locus of control is, oh my goodness, I can't control anything. I'm stuck in this situation. I'm born into this world. I don't even want to know what my IQ is because, and how. But if somebody will tell me what to do and what to think and how to do it and what to think it, I feel comfort.
Yeah, I'll buy that.
Because they don't have the confidence of the internal locus of control. It's like, whatever it is, I can handle it. It's like, whatever it is, I better put it in God's hand. Or we better have a strong government that's going to get rid of all the bad people so I don't have to deal with them.
Oh, these are such complicated conversations, most of them beyond my purview. I mean, you're the psychologist, but I
Well,
go ahead, Sharon.
well, Seth, I've been listening to you a long time. You're no lightweight. I've read your books.
Oh
and,
shit!
I think
I would never take an
you're
IQ test. I suspect I have the IQ of a block of cheese. I just want that on the record. I'm just one guy doing his best
Seth,
here. So
Seth, I have given thousands of IQ tests, and I have a sense of when I meet somebody where they are on the spectrum, and you would definitely be in the upper quadrant, perhaps the upper decile of people who
Well,
with IQs.
you are
Because
so very
you're very articulate, and you're very thoughtful, and you think on your feet well enough to have these kinds of conversations and do the kind of balance between not maintaining civility and all that. This requires a certain skill set that does not correlate with low intelligence. Okay.
Sharon, you're not
Usually
just a
high
school
intelligence
psychologist. You
behavior.
were a school cheerleader, I think. You're amazing. I'm going to take you with me on the road. You can build me up before I take the stage. Get me in the zone. I mean, you're just a
Oh
gift.
yeah. Well, I'll see you in Cincinnati. I'm planning on
That's
going
a
to see
date.
you and
That's a date. Sharon, you are
so
most
if you
kind.
want to chat before, I will come up and chat with you and tell you how smart you are and how beloved you are and
Okay, yeah.
and
Oh well, that's a date, and I look.
if you weren't good at what you were doing, you wouldn't be successful at it, and you wouldn't be good at it if you weren't intelligent. So
Thank you,
you've got
Sharon.
evidence there. Come
All
on.
right. Well, thank you again.
Okay.
You've given us a lot to think and talk about, which is what I want this show to always
Yeah.
be. And so, thank you for the call, and
Okay.
I look forward to meeting you in person. Okay.
Yeah. All righty.
All right. Take
Okay.
care.
Bye.
Bye. I don't get cocky, right? I've been in the room with AC Grayling, and I think I'm an idiot. There was a cardiac surgeon who and an activist at Weekend Reason in Calgary, and when I listened to him speak, just extemporaneously, I thought, I'm an idiot. It's all relative. Of course, I have met people in my life that do that I don't know how else to say this. I don't know why I'm going to tell you this. No, I do know why, because it's funny. But there's a comedian. His name is Ron White, and he has this. I think it's the name of an album. I don't follow his work, but I just happened to see a clip, and it's called "You Can't Fix Stupid." So the thinking is ignorance can be fixed. I think in the Unholy Trinity promo, and by the way, the Unholy Trinity are in Raw, and Matt Dillahunty and I were going to Fort Worth August 29th. But in Matt's clip, he's like, I understand ignorance, which can be fixed through education. I hate willful ignorance, which I think is just stupidity. And Natalie and I were talking about how we in this culture have gotten where we are. And I think, first of all, we are encouraged to live our lives in a culture of distraction. They don't want us to know who our Supreme Court justices are, where they came from, what their background and values are, who funded them. Right? They don't want us to know who the Speaker of the House is. They don't want us to know Donald Trump's long history. They don't want us to know the details of how things work in the machine in which we happen to live or exist. They want us watching The Bachelor. They want us glued to some other distraction. They want us over here, freaking out about all this other stuff, or just checked out. It's too noisy in this world. I give up. They're all corrupt. It's all bad. I'm not even going to participate. I'm going to take my ball and go home. They want us that way. Was it George Carlin who said, we don't have leaders in this country, we have owners? And when I do hear an opinion rendered by some of the people that I bump into here in Red State, Oklahoma, I'm terrified of the fact that they do sort of pull the lever at the ballot box. They have an opinion, but they don't have an informed opinion. And the opinions that they express are terrifyingly stupid. I overheard. I'll get to you. Emily, you've been on hold for an hour. I'm right there. I overhear somebody in this group, And she's like, you know what? I didn't vaccinate my kids. I mean, I did this. Homeopathy is what I use for my family because all natural and blah, blah, big pharma. And I'm just like, homeopathy. How easy is it to debunk the bunk of homeopathy? Homeopathy. It's an Everest-sized mountain of bullshit. It is so easily refuted. Homeopathy. Horseshit. And it wouldn't matter what I said to her about the process and how it's been debunked. And I could show her the video of skeptic James Randi, who took a whole bottle of homeopathic medicine and ate it on stage and OD'd on homeopathy and nothing happened to him. The danger of rejecting science-based medicine, especially when it comes to children who deserve better. I could have gotten into all this. She didn't care. She doesn't care. She's right because she's right. Homeopathy works. She also believes in astrology. And I shit you not that the earth is flat because the Bible. Is it ignorance? Okay. Is it stupid? You're damn right it's stupid. And there are some people who would get mad at me for using that word, stupid. The acoustics inside her skull must be amazing. Emily, are you still there after an hour? Emily, hello? Earth to Emily, are you there?
Can you hear me?
I can. Thanks for your patience. What's going on?
Well, first of all, you mentioned George Carlin earlier. I just wanted to point out that probably one of my favorite clips from him was when he's talking about how pro-life is really anti-woman. But it's really sad that how, after all these years, it's still relevant.
It is. Carlin had an amazing comic gift, but he was a great commenter on our culture. He just saw it. And when I go back through the classic clips, I think he got it. And he said it's unfixable. And I hate to say I agree. I'm not going to give up. But he began to focus more on his own inner circle and his interpersonal relationships and trying to live a happy life as best he could while commenting on everything else. But he knew we're owned. The government, politicians don't give a shit about us. The oligarchs certainly don't. The world's on fire. Human beings have a self-destructive tendency in a lot of ways. At least the power players do. And those are the people that tend to rise to power. And the rest of us look around and go, oh, they want us to, hey, we'll give them a 60-hour work week. We'll give them maybe 2 weeks off a year to relax, to go vacation, just enough of an income to survive. And they'll think that's an existence while we go off and live the life of Riley. And that's just going to be normal. And Carlin was a prophet in many ways, too, about what we're in today. I'm sorry, I went off on a tangent. Emily, what's on your mind today?
I guess I don't know how to word this very well, so let me try to. I'm a little awkward, sorry.
You're fine.
I'm an atheist, but I don't always. I'm very selective on who I come out, as atheist to. I have to trust you. But there's been times where I've told somebody I'm an atheist and they push back, well, how can you not believe in a God? Something, tornado through a junkyard builds a plane. And I have a basic understanding of biology, cosmology, that sort of thing. So I guess my question is, how do I defend my, lack of beliefs without relying on a appeal to authority sort of policy? You get what I'm saying?
Well, the conversation about evolution and the conversation about a belief in God are actually A-B conversations. They're both very different. A lot of God believers.
Yeah, but they're the ones that usually bring up, how can you believe, how can you not believe in a God? What do you think? We came from apes or that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
I understand it myself. It's just I'm not very good at articulating, I guess.
Well,
what I'm
it's
looking
good.
for.
It's good to know that about yourself. First of all, for those who are listening and they want me to address the 747 in a junkyard argument that apologists like to use, how in the world did all these things accidentally spin into existence? One of these amazing complex machines with purpose, and they've totally misunderstood and misrepresented what evolution is. Evolution does not operate with an end zone in mind, right? So the premise of the
Right.
argument itself, but you already know that, Emily. I think if you have a
Yeah.
hard time drawing the water from the well, if you don't feel confident enough to engage verbally, these may not be exchanges you want to subject yourself to. You don't owe them
Right. No, and I know.
a conversation or
Okay.
explanation unless you simply just want to and you're trying to sharpen those tools. Is that it?
Yeah, I just kind of want people to understand where I'm coming from,
Sure.
and and I don't want like people like misconstruing what my beliefs or lack of beliefs mean. Does that make sense?
I think from where you're at, let's distill it down. These conversations
Okay.
tend to spin out of control, right? So here's what happens. I sit in the
Mhm.
living room and somebody's like, well, how can you not believe in a God? And I'm like, well, I just don't. I've read the Bible, I've read the Quran. Here's what I see and don't see in nature, and I don't need it. And then they jump into the 747 in a junkyard or the evolution of the eye or where do your morals come from? And then I'm running around trying to chase down all those things. And then that brings up three or four other topics and voices start to raise and everybody starts to straighten up and stiffen up and sit forward and it becomes chaos, right? And this is a trap we've all
Right.
we've all done fall into these traps, Emily. And my encouragement to you would be to resist that. I think your best friend right now is simplicity. When someone says, how can you
Okay.
not believe in God? And this is something you can practice. Some people have used little cue cards. I kid you not. They actually are able to take a point, make a dozen cue cards, and they just are able to situationalize what might be said. How would I approach and how would I not get sucked in? And you just are able to say, well, I've looked into Christianity and I've read about this and I don't see an evidence for God and in my own life I don't need it. I'm certainly curious if evidence for a God becomes available. I would be interested because I want to be a creature of truth, but I in my own life I don't believe it. I don't really buy it and I don't need it. Thanks for asking. A simple answer that doesn't lead
Right.
you down a potential dozen other paths that might escalate into something that doesn't become productive. You've made your position. I don't believe it. I've looked into it. Don't buy it. Don't need it. Thank you for asking. It's all good. That may serve you better than trying to answer a lot of these sort of minefield questions about evolution and design, et cetera. Does that make any sense?
Totally. And if it helps, my background is I was originally born into a Catholic family, not like an extreme Catholic family or anything. We just went to church like once a week, and I went to Catholic school for a few years.
Yeah.
Then later on, as a teenager, I fell into a Baptist church and was with them for a while. But then as I got older, as I got to be an adult, it was about the time I think you started. And then people like R and Raw, and I was fell into that rabbit hole of atheism, and I'm an atheist.
Well, I don't know if we're in a rabbit hole. I think, mostly we just don't buy it. We don't believe in a God. And you've got some equity there. I was raised in the church. I speak the language. I understand what's being taught and preached and I get it. And here's how I phrase it, Emily. I say, I realize, and I use the word I, not you or they or it, or, I looked in. I use the word I and I say, I realized that in my own life, I'd been raised as it to be true, but I had never done my own thinking on it. So I came to a point when I did my own thinking and I began to read and research and reabsorb and reanalyze. And I came to a point where I did not believe it and I don't need it in my own life. I love my life. I'm doing great. And, I hope that that clears it up, right? It keeps them from being usually on the defensive. It's simple and you don't get sucked in and they will try to suck you in. All right. They're going to throw the kitchen sink at you. You can have those conversations about the details, but certainly not at the beginning. And I think you have to parse them out and be aware this conversation's about you. You don't owe them a defense. You're simply saying, hey, you want to know where I'm at? Here it is in a nutshell. Thank you for asking. My life is good and appreciate you very much. I think that's going to serve you down the way. Okay, Emily?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you so much.
Thanks for calling. Good luck out there.
Yeah,
See you.
thank you. You have a good one.
All righty. I've gotten sucked in. Family members are like, well, what about this? And what about that? And I'm like, oh, yeah, well, what about this? And what about that? And then they say, oh, yeah. And then I get into the Old Testament, the New Testament, and God and Jesus fulfilled the law. And what about evolution? What about babies dying of cancer and natural disasters? No, yeah, what about this? And man sin and fall of man and man in Genesis. And before you know it, we are well off into the weeds. Everybody's pissed. Everybody's shouting, doubling down. Somebody hangs up. I've hung up on people. And you don't even get the satisfaction that you got back in the 80s. When you had an actual phone plugged into the wall with a handset, bam. Oh, yeah? Well, that's all I have to say to you about that. Bam. You don't even get the satisfaction of a good, solid hang up. Instead, you reach for the button and go, beep. That is not satisfying. It's not satisfying. They need to bring back the handset just for the conversations where you want to go, bye, bam. I've done it. And I've had to train myself, parse it out, keep it simple, make sure you don't get sucked in. Because tell me a time when somebody's gotten into a shouting match like that, and all of a sudden, one party looked at the other and said, you know what? You're absolutely right. I've totally changed my mind on this important issue. Thank you for being so reasonable. Never, 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 never. Shouting matches like that, it may be about you're protesting, you feel belittled. That's a different thing. But even then, know when to give up and leave. Simple. Parse it out. Conversations take a while. I've got a web call. I don't know how to pronounce your first name. Please help me out here.
Hi, am I Howell?
My Howell, thank you very much for calling. What's going on?
Hi, I called in to say that to you Americanian people, USA people, that your president has said these things about how everyone's used to laugh at their country, they're not laughing now, and the Bible will make it all right and everything. Out here in what I think of as the real world, it's just laughable. It's just ridiculous. It's insane. Like for instance, your country says to us, not you personally, but your country says to us that put the Bible back in the schools, prayer back in the schools. Oh yeah. Well, when I went to school, we had prayer every day. We had hymn singing every day, and we had some bloke stand up and talk to us about the book, the book, you know the one I mean. And well, I was about 11 before I went, oh no, this is not happening, man, no way. And I put that behind me, but still had it going through. My last job, I was working in a preschool with children of 2.5 to 4 years old. And because of the Education Act 1944, we had daily prayer twice a day. And we only left from 9 till 12 in the morning, 9 in the morning to 12 midday. And we had 2 sets of prayer. One past 10 before we had our toast, we had a little prayer saying thank you for the toast, or thank you for the food, and that nonsense. And then another one that 5 to 12 just before the children left, where we say, oh, thank you, nonsense. And it was ridiculous. 4-year-olds who did not understand what was going on. And they were made to say this. And my boss turned around to me and said to me, oh, you've got to make them do this. And I go, no. And children were sat around the table, 6 children and me sat around the table. And 3-year-olds would say to me, you've got to put your hands together like this. You know what I mean? Put your hands together like this. I said, no, you don't have to. We don't have to. All we need to do is be quiet and let other people get on with doing their thing and don't disturb. So I was looking after a child with, I was personally one-to-one with a child with learning difficulties, she was saying, prelingual, didn't speak, not here, not with the rest of us, not quite on the ball. Yeah, lovely person, lovely. Just didn't understand, didn't get on. And the boss is going, put her hands together. She got to join in. And I'm like, no, this doesn't happen. I'll restrict her from being disruptive. Anyway, that's the Education Act 1944 in the United Kingdom, Great Britain, where I live, which daily prayer. Oh, it's ridiculous. And you want to introduce it in your country? No, not you. The government, some people want to introduce it in United States and go, oh, no, go for it, man, because it'll kick so many people off. And you go just, and people go, no, I don't want to listen. Just back away from it because it's nonsense. Okay,
Well,
that's that one.
If I may, I know Texas just voted to mandate the teaching of the Bible in public school classrooms. And of course, part of me is like, fine, let's teach the whole thing. Let's go. Come on, let's teach it. Let's teach about the kidnapping of the Midianite virgins. Let's talk about burning Jephthah's daughter on the pyre. Let's talk about executing disobedient kids. Let's talk about slavery and the beating of slaves. Oh, let's tell them the whole thing. Let's talk about, the ejaculation upon the ground and all those types of the stories. Give me the book and give me a half an hour and the minds of young children and allow me to teach the good word of God. Quickly, what was your second point?
Okay, back with religion, it's religion and politics. It's the same thing. It's honestly, I'm saying we Europeans are laughing at you, not you personally, your country, because you've got a clown, and worse yet, you've elected that clown
Twice.
I'm so sad for you. I look at a bit of it and go, oh yeah, it's probably down to this electoral college, which was a good idea 200 years ago when you didn't have telegraph and you couldn't let every village let the city know, and the city let the state know, and the state let the country know. When you didn't have that, yeah, sure, it takes 3 months to get the election sorted, and then the boy, it's always a boy, come through in January after the vote in November. But in my country, we have a vote, and it takes all night to count it. Sometimes it doesn't come through till midday the next day, and by tea time,
I get it. I get it. The more Trump says the world has never taken us more seriously, the more the rest of the world is laughing at us. And all of you are wondering what the hell happened and how could we do it. I think, if I may, I would like to say this, and this is part of what I've been writing about in the book that may never see the light of day. But what has happened is part of more than a 50-year campaign. Much of the doings have been behind the scenes, where people have been using the Trump presidency to be able to secure the halls of power. So while, yes, we have a nation of tens of millions of idiots and bigots who looked at Donald Trump and said, yay, more, we are also looking at people like Peter Thiel and Russell Vaux and Leonard Leo and Barry Seid and a lot of these massively wealthy organizations that have behind the scenes been putting the chess pieces in place for a theocratic takeover of the United States using Donald Trump as their way in. It's a massively complicated machine, but we deserve mockery, we deserve ridicule, and we deserve grief and concern by the rest of the world. Just know that there are tens of millions of American citizens who feel exactly the same way as you do in the UK. Okay?
I know. I've seen the Kings, the No Kings rallies. I know there are plenty of decent, good, sensible, logical, news reading, aware people. But the face, the forward face, the presentation, the boy who we all look at, that orange bleep, the orange person. Oh no, oh gosh, I so
Right.
much sympathy for you. I hope you get better soon.
Well, you're very
Good luck,
kind.
people.
Thanks. Thanks for understanding that we're not all trying to, shoot holes in the hull of the ship so it sinks to own the libs. Many of us are trying to save what's left of our democracy. But I do appreciate your call. I got to move on, my friend. You be safe over there in the UK. Okay.
Iawn, diolch. Tra.
All right. Thank you. Take care. Very exuberant caller from London. That's all I got for you today. Boy, we've gone wild, haven't we? Well over 2.5-ish hours. And thank you for indulging me, telling my personal stories. Thank you for some great and compelling and interesting calls, a variety of calls today. A lot of stuff to talk about. Thanks for being a part of the community. I hope I do get a chance to see you on the road, whether it's in Cincinnati or in Fort Worth. I'm going to be in Sarnia, Ontario, going to Huntsville, Alabama. Again, thethinkingatheist.com/events does have details on major events, not just the stuff I'm going to be at, but just stuff that's going on all around the country, including NanoCon, Freedom from Religion, and I think there's some other stuff on the way. In the meantime, I'm so thankful for your friendship and support, and I'm thankful for you just being here. And it means the world. And it's been good therapy for me just to be able to talk about some of this family stuff. I hope I haven't burdened you with it, but that's good medicine. And so anyway, it means a lot to me, and it means a lot to Natalie to know that there's a community that has our back out here as well. So I'm going to go and check on my wailing cat. I'm going to check on my wife. Then I'm going to go check on my wailing cat, and then I'm going to light my magical candle and see how she does today. And I will see you back here on the stream next time. You take